The familiar whistle from my husband echoed through the hallway one final time, before the heavy apartment door closed with a soft metallic thud. Another work trip, this time to Munich, where he would spend 2 long weeks, supervising a series of training programs. 2 weeks that stretched ahead like an unending winter night. For a moment, I leaned against the door, listening to the faint hum of the elevator descending. The sound faded quickly, leaving behind only silence and Frost, our enormous shepherd, sitting loyally by my feet. His thick, snow-white fur caught the warm ember glow streaming through the tall windows. Beyond the glass walls of our 15th-floor apartment, St. Petersburg shimmered like a frozen sea of stars. The reflections of distant towers rippled softly across the Neva River, as though the whole city hovered somewhere between memory and sky. I sighed and drifted toward the kitchen. The faint aroma of roasted coffee lingered, his morning routine still alive in the air. Everything he touched held a trace of him: the coffee mug by the sink, the folded newspaper, the faint scent of cologne settling through the room. Frost followed me quietly, his paws barely whispering on the marble. "Come on, boy," I murmured. His ears twitched, understanding in his amber eyes. We moved into the living room, where soft golden light washed over polished floors and modern furniture. I collapsed onto the leather couch and buried my fingers in Frost's thick mane. His steady presence grounded me in a space that suddenly felt too large. My husband had always been devoted to his work, admirably, relentlessly. Duty first, travel always. I had learned to love him in brief fragments, shared weekends, stolen conversations, fading laughter. Still, every time he left, that hollow ache returned. I remembered our better nights on this very couch, laughing until the city outside blurred into streaks of silver light. Now, in the absence of those moments, the apartment felt colder. Later, I stepped onto the terrace. Winter air wrapped around me, sharp and metallic, carrying the promise of snow. Frost padded beside me, his tail swaying like a slow metronome. The skyline stretched endlessly ahead, a mosaic of light and shadow. "What do you think?" I whispered. He answered with a soft bark. I smiled. "Yeah, it's beautiful." Back inside, I warmed soup, sliced bread, and listened to Frost eat. The quiet around us wasn't empty, it simply had weight. A steady rhythm, the hum of the refrigerator, the distant ticking of the clock. After dinner, we returned to the couch. I played an old black and white film, the kind my husband never had patience for. Frost curled at my feet. His breathing rose and fell gently, lulling the room into calm. I missed my husband, his warmth, his presence, but beneath the longing something else stirred, a restlessness without a name. Maybe it was loneliness. Maybe it was the realization that I had built my entire world around someone who was rarely there. I looked at Frost again. His eyes glowed softly in the dim room, calm, steady, understanding in ways that required no language. He wasn't just a pet. He was the one constant in a world in constant motion. A year earlier, during one of my husband's longer assignments abroad, the silence had nearly swallowed me whole. Winter had been merciless, the nights unbearably long. I had drifted toward bad habits, reaching for the cold bottle of vodka just to fill the hours. But Frost never left my side. He would rest his head against me gently, reminding me that I was still here, still someone. Now, as snow began to fall outside, I sat by the window, watching the city fade beneath soft white silence. Frost rested his head in my lap. I ran my fingers through his thick fur and felt something inside me steady. The loneliness didn't vanish, but it softened, wrapped in his quiet companionship. When the lamp finally went dark, only the faint glow of the city seeped through the blinds. Frost curled closer. Outside, the wind whispered. Inside, between woman and loyal companion, the night settled into fragile peace. Frost climbed onto the rug beside me, his heavy frame settling with a soft thud. He didn't need to do anything, just existing near me was enough. I switched on the old floor lamp, its amber glow softening the edges of the room. Outside, snow drifted through the yellow light like slow-moving sparks. I poured a glass of water and stood before the window, watching my reflection blend with the dark skyline. For a long while, I stayed like that, silent, suspended between the world inside and the frozen city outside. Frost lifted his head now and then, watching me as if counting every breath I let out. His presence was comforting, a quiet bond that asked for nothing, but beneath that comfort, something else stirred. A faint tension born from too many nights without another human voice. I closed my eyes and leaned back into the cushions. My thoughts drifted not to my husband himself, but to the echo of him. The laughter that once filled the hallway, the rustle of papers in his bag, the invisible warmth he used to leave behind even when he said nothing. That essence had thinned over time, leaving only shadows. Frost nudged my hand gently, his fur warm beneath my palm. "You're the only one who really listens," I whispered. He didn't move, just blinked, his amber eyes catching the lamplight like small embers. That night, sleep refused to come. The apartment felt too large, too hollow. Every creak amplified, every gust of wind brushing the window like fingertips. Wrapped in a blanket, I wandered into the small reading room. Frost followed, his nails clicking softly on the parquet floor. I sank into the old armchair and opened a photo album. The early years stared back at me, smiles frozen mid-laughter, faces brighter than I remembered. My own eyes were wide, open, hopeful. I traced the photo with my thumb, wondering when that light inside me had dimmed. Frost rested his chin on my knee, sighing. "Do you think he misses me?" I asked the quiet air. Only the soft hum of the radiator answered. And Frost, steady as always, I remembered the first long trip he ever took. The silence had terrified me. The walls felt like they were inching closer, the nights impossibly long. I tried filling them with music, work, anything, but nothing helped. Only when Frost arrived, all oversized paws and clumsy affection, did the house feel alive again. Now he was grown, powerful, gentle, a silent guardian. In many ways, he was my mirror. We both waited for the same man, the next morning, pale and gray. I decided to take him for a long walk through Yellow Island. The park was nearly empty, draped in fresh snow. Frost bounded ahead, kicking up white powder, leaving deep prints behind him. I followed with my hands buried in my coat pockets, scarf tucked high around my nose. For the first time in days, my lips curved into a genuine smile. His joy was contagious in a way only animals possess. When he turned back toward me, tail wagging, something warm and sharp tugged at my chest. "Don't go too far," I called, my breath rising in a soft cloud. He barked once and ran back, brushing snow against my coat as he pressed close. The loneliness eased for a fleeting moment. That evening, the apartment felt warmer. I lit a candle on the coffee table, its flame dancing across the polished surfaces. Soft instrumental music filled the room, a gentle hum that didn't demand attention. Frost curled beside me. I reached down and rested my hand on his back. "If you could talk," I murmured, "I don't think I'd need anyone else." The words slipped out before I could stop them, followed by a sting of guilt. But Frost only sighed. As if he understood a truth I didn't dare name, sometimes companionship becomes more essential than anything else. Outside, snow continued to fall, blurring the city lights into soft gold. I leaned back as the warmth around me folded into a half-dreaming haze. Somewhere far away, my husband's world pulsed with stadiums, crowds, and noise. But here, within these quiet walls, time barely moved, and that stillness revealed something both beautiful and dangerous. When companionship becomes your lifeline, it can begin to replace everything else. The days blurred into one another. Snow fell, melted, returned. The world outside shifted in shades of white and silver, while inside everything remained still. Frost followed me more closely than ever. If I moved from the kitchen to the living room, he came. If I lingered at the window, he pressed against my leg as if anchoring me. And perhaps he was right too. Without him, I might have drifted into the quiet and never found my way out. My husband called occasionally from Munich, surface conversations about weather, schedules, the team. Nothing deeper. "You sound distant," I told him once. "Just tired," he answered. I almost said "I miss you," but the words felt too fragile. Instead, I offered to cook his favorite meal for when he returned. "Perfect," he said, already distracted, when the call ended. I stared at the dark screen for a long time. Frost nudged my knee. My fingers found his fur again. "You listen better than he ever does," I whispered, the boundary between confession and comfort blurring more each day. That night I dreamed of running barefoot through snow, chasing a shadow always just out of reach. Frost stood on a hill in the dream, silent, watchful, his eyes glowing like lanterns through the storm. I woke with tears on my cheeks, not from fear, but from recognizing something wordless, something ancient. By the third morning, even the smallest tasks felt deliberate: tying a scarf, brushing my hair, boiling water. Frost watched from the doorway, steady and eternal. And slowly, I began speaking to him more, not as one speaks to a pet, but as one speaks to the only presence that truly remains. He became something like a silent confidant, steady, patient, always there when the words I'd never said aloud began to rise. I told him about the fear of fading into the background after stepping away from the field, the quiet sting of watching others carry the ambition I once held, and how praise from people had slowly transformed into distant nostalgia. He never judged. He only listened, his breath slow and rhythmic, tethering me to the present. Sometimes, passing the hallway mirror, I barely recognized myself. My expression seemed softer, yes, but shadowed too, like a candle melting unevenly in one forgotten corner of the room. On the 12th day of the trip, the weather shifted violently. A storm pushed through the city like a living thing, rattling the windows and filling the air with a low, trembling hum. The lights flickered, then steadied. I lit candles and wrapped myself in a blanket, settling on the floor beside him as the world outside dissolved into white chaos. His head rested on my lap, solid and warm. His heartbeat matched mine, slow and reassuring. People weren't meant for this much silence, I whispered into the dim glow. It makes you see things that aren't there, he shifted gently, his breath brushing my arm. And I realized just how long he had been the only one I truly spoke to. The thought frightened me, and yet imagining the house without him was far worse. 2 nights later. The door opened past midnight. The familiar jangle of keys sent a jolt through my chest, relief, dread, confusion all tangled together. He stepped inside, snow clinging to his coat, offering a tired smile, surprise. The flights changed, I muttered something about tea and fled to the kitchen. From the hallway mirror, I saw him pause and scan the room as if stepping into a hotel he vaguely remembered. When he sat down, my companion moved to my side, not aggressive, just attentive, watchful. The man chuckled nervously. He's gotten protective, he said. But there was no wagging tail, no friendly gesture, only quiet observation. We spoke in surface-level fragments, travel, delays, schedules. He didn't notice the new candle holder or the unread books stacked by the window. He didn't notice that my smile didn't quite reach my eyes. Later, when he draped an arm around my shoulders, the warmth startled me. It felt oddly foreign. I missed this view, he murmured. I agreed softly. But inside something shifted, a quiet realization that the space between us was no longer temporary. It had grown roots. The following days returned to routine. Early mornings, late nights. My companion stayed at my side with a steady devotion the man couldn't quite read, only sense. One morning he commented, tightening his scarf, he seems unusually attached. You should take him out more, I nodded. Though both of us knew the attachment had nothing to do with walks that evening on the terrace. As the mist blurred the city lights, he pressed against my leg again. I rested my hand on his head, feeling that familiar, grounding presence. The world measured connection by logic, but this defied logic. It wasn't desire or confusion. It was simply loneliness finding the only shelter it could. As snow drifted softly through the air, I whispered, thank you for staying when no one else did. He looked up, amber eyes reflecting the city glow, and for a heartbeat, I felt deeply understood. A soft knock of wind against the balcony glass woke me the next morning. Winter was loosening its grip. Thin cracks of water shimmered across the river, as if the city itself were beginning to breathe again. The man had already left. His unfinished coffee cooled on the counter, another pattern returning without its meaning. My companion followed me through the quiet rooms, each step steady, deliberate. When I looked at him now, I didn't see a pet. I saw my own reflection, loyal, quiet, shaped by weeks of silence. There had been nights when his presence held me together, when his warmth kept something inside me from shattering. Guilt settled in, not for anything I had done, but for the thoughts loneliness had carved into shape. Later at the academy, the children's laughter echoed too loudly. Their joy felt distant, like a language I once spoke but no longer remembered. After practice, I lingered, then walked home through the glowing streets, choosing the quiet. When I returned, the apartment was dark. He greeted me with gentle excitement, pressing close. I sat with him on the couch, the city humming faintly outside. Words rose without permission. I used to think love meant devotion, sacrifice, waiting, I murmured. But maybe it's simpler. Maybe love is just the courage to stay when the world grows quiet. He didn't move, didn't answer. But his presence was enough. A few days later, the man returned early again. He found me by the window with my companion beside me. You've been quiet, he said. Different, I replied softly. Silence becomes a habit. He hesitated, then reached for my hand, tentative, as if offering an apology rather than affection. Let's take a trip after the season, he said. Just us, I agreed, not out of longing, but out of willingness to try. I spent the next mornings walking along the river before sunrise. The cold air cleared my thoughts, and somewhere between footsteps and the whisper of water, I understood it wasn't absence that had changed me. It was learning I had built my life waiting for someone else to break the silence. He trotted beside me, breath visible in the dawn. Solid and sure, you taught me that staying doesn't always mean belonging, I whispered. When the man returned from his next trip, shorter this time, I met him with clarity rather than confusion. For the first time in months, we spoke honestly about distance, fear, and what silence reveals. Nothing was entirely healed, but something had shifted that night. Listening to steady rhythms of breathing, one human, one loyal, I didn't feel lonely. I had learned that love isn't about possession or constant presence. Love is witnessing. Love is choosing to remain when the world grows quiet.